everybody, I appreciate you clicking on the video. I just wanted to take a minute and say I have had a great day. I got to meet my sons in Memphis to eat lunch. My wife and I drove there. We met both of our sons and one of their wives. The other one's wife was sick, but I got to see them. And it was just, I hadn't seen them in 2 months, and it was just so glad. I was so glad to see those guys. And they're happy, they're doing good in their jobs, and I just wanted to let you know that. It just made my day to see them. Okay, let's move on with the podcast. I have a letter here, an email from Patty. This is an extremely interesting story. It's a little bit long, but I think the people that follow the UFO topic are going to really enjoy this. Here's what Patty writes. I'm an identical twin. We are so much alike, it's uncanny. We say things at the same time, and we think alike, and we act alike, and we do most everything alike. We have always had the ability to finish each other's sentences or even to answer each other without having to ask a question. It's like we're in each other's minds. You know, I've known several sets of twins through the years, and they're all that way, especially the identical twins. Probably, I think if they're not identical, they're fraternal. But they're always in sync with each other. They know anyway, I'm rambling. Let me get on with the story. I know it's that way with most twins, but I believe our bond is extra strong because we moved around the United States so much when we were little. My father was in computers at the time when the average computer took up an entire room with spinning reels, banks of flashing lights, and black screens and green letters. The information stored on a computer that size back then could be put into a thumb drive today. People like my dad were in high demand then because there were so few of them. So we'd move to one place and stay until the computer installation was done, and then we'd move somewhere else. In between, Dad still traveled a lot, and that left Mom to raise us kids alone for the most part. She had to be strict in order to control us, and she was good at it. And as for us kids, we learned to be each other's best friends. Last spring, my twin and I turned 58. As a present, my husband got us a nice hotel suite so we could be together. I live in central Illinois now, and my twin lives 2.5 hours away. And it was a fantastic gift, but I'm fairly certain that he saw it as a gift to himself as much as it was for us. When my twin and I get together, it doesn't take long for us to get loud and obnoxious. We love to laugh, and when we're together, we laugh at everything. Well, our plan was simple. We would check into the hotel and have a nice dinner at the hotel restaurant. We'd take a swim in the pool and do our nails and play board games and drink a lot. Everything went according to plan right up until the margaritas and the birthday tequila shots. My sister must have told them it was my birthday because when they brought the shots, they began to sing to me. And I quickly pointed out that we're twins, so it was her birthday too. We're identical twins. How had they failed to notice that? We staggered back to our hotel room, which, given the immense size of the hotel, was about 3 blocks away, and decided it would be better if we made it an early night. Of course, we sat up and we reminisced a while, and we talked about the UFOs. I suppose I should have mentioned that when I turned 50, I began to be plagued by UFOs. We had a hot tub in our backyard that I loved to spend time in. There was nothing quite like sitting out there on a hot summer night and staring up at the beautiful night sky. I didn't even mind at first when I began to see them. There were 12 or 13 different types. One of them would not leave me alone for 6 months. It was a small white triangle that usually appeared around 2,000 feet up. It would have a bright white flash of light on it when the sun hit it just right. That flash of light was what first caught my eye. It never moved much faster than an airplane, but it clearly wasn't a plane. I live close to an airport, so I can recognize the difference. It never made any noise either. Over the years, I began to report my sightings to the Mutual UFO Network, or MUFON. And for the first 2 years after it started, I didn't have a phone with a camera that could take pictures of them, but once I did, I began to share the photos and the short videos I made of my MUFON investigator. At one point, I had so many sightings that MUFON wanted to come and do a whole story on the phenomena. COVID made that impossible, though. After a while, seeing UFOs all the time isn't as fun as you might think. My grandson had been diagnosed with cancer, and it was in remission, but then the cancer came back, and with everything else, it all got to be too much for me. I went to the doctor, and though I didn't share the whole UFO sightings thing, my blood pressure was out of control, and it was obvious that I was not handling this stress very well, so I ended up on blood pressure medicine. The doctor probably would have put me on more than BP meds if I'd mentioned UFOs. I didn't want to be labeled a lunatic, so I kept the stories to myself. I even made the resolution not to look up at the sky anymore. Secretly, though, I knew that it was those sightings that pushed me over the edge. The one person I talked to about them was my sister, and once I had the photographic evidence, I began to tell her about them, and she believed me. We don't lie to each other. It would be useless to try. We know each other too well. So I told her about the UFO that kept following me. I told her about the different shapes and sizes of the other ones, and I talked about the ones that move at unbelievable speeds and the ones that go invisible right before my eyes. I told her about the ones that could have come within 10 feet of me and the ones I've seen from a long distance. She hung on my every word. My husband of 17 years said he believed me too, but it was different with my sister. No matter how much my husband tried to reassure me, there was always a slight sound of doubt in his voice. I didn't blame him, it all sounded so crazy, but with my sister there was no doubt. Since I've often wondered why me, it was especially nice to know that my sister believed it all. To my surprise, she didn't just believe me, she was excited about it when I first told her. That was when she told me that she too had seen a UFO 2 years before that I had my experience. Although my sister and I never lie to each other, she had not told me before then because she was afraid that I wouldn't believe her. We didn't need anything more to bond over, but knowing that she saw what I saw, I don't know. It was like going from Elmer School glue to Gorilla Glue. These were the things we talked about that night in the hotel. There were other topics too. We talked about living outside of Chicago in 1968 when we were 3 and how we used to imagine that we were flying, and we both always wished that we could be birds. When we left the house 2 years later and moved to another state nearby, we continued those fantasies and dreams of flying. We really did have vivid imaginations back then, and we both remarked at how real those dreams of flying were. I also talked to her about how I was afraid to look up at the sky now and how the things I was seeing had driven my blood pressure through the roof. I talked about how I missed seeing the birds and the clouds overhead and the stars and the moons and the planets. I missed sitting in my hot tub and playing disc golf with my husband too. The margaritas and the birthday shots got the better of us, and we knew that we were going to have to sleep. Now, neither of us can sleep without the assistance of a sleeping pill. Yes, I know, alcohol and sleeping pills don't mix, but we were in no condition to make good decisions. We popped our pills and climbed into bed, and we were both soon fast asleep, and it was only 8:30 p.m. At 2 a.m., my twin woke up and was staring at the foot of the bed. And it's funny how we're so connected that an action as simple as staring at the foot of the bed was enough to wake me up. "What are you staring at?" I asked. "Something's playing with my feet," she told me. And then she added, "Are you doing that?" She could plainly see that I was lying still beside her, so I don't think she meant that question to be a serious one. I think it was more of a case of her looking for an answer, any answer, to explain what she was feeling. I told her it wasn't me and to go back to sleep. At 3 a.m., I woke up again to find my twin staring at the foot of the bed. "Patty," she said, "I'm not fooling around. Something is playing with my feet and pushing down on the bed down there." I believe you, I said, but we got to get some sleep. Now, I have to admit there was a slight doubt in the back of my mind that she might have been dreaming it, but all doubt was removed at 4:30 when my twin woke up to find me staring at the foot of the bed. "What is that?" I said, now fully understanding why she was so freaked out earlier. It was so weird, and I demonstrated to her what I was feeling. It was like a hand pressing down on the bed and a feather-like thing tickling around my feet. It was the same thing that she felt earlier. "Screw this," I told her. "Let's get out of here." We got up and we packed in a hurry and we left the room cards on the desk and we practically ran out to her car. Within 3 minutes, we were back at my house explaining to my very confused husband why we couldn't stay there any longer. At first, he wasn't sure if we were teasing him, but the more we told the story, the more he began to believe us. But it doesn't end there. After our birthday, I told my twin that my blood pressure was under control now and that I was going to start looking up at the sky again. That led me to talk more about how we used to imagine flying when we were kids. We talked about how wonderful it would be if we were reincarnated as different types of birds. It was like a switch came on for both of us at the same time. We looked at each other and said, "Wait, we have flown before." And all those images in our minds of being in the air weren't imagination. They were a memory. We got so excited talking about that we began to finish each other's sentences again. And I remembered living at the house in Chicago, and my sister remembered the other house later on. And we shared our stories and we compared them. And the more we talked, the more we realized that these were extraterrestrial encounters. Now, I clearly remember one time when we were floating out of our bedroom and going down a long hall very close to the ceiling. We went through a door that led to a small second-story deck that we were forbidden to go on because it was so dangerous. We didn't touch that door. It was open for us. And I can clearly remember exactly how it appeared from above the deck looking down at the ground. And then we went higher, above a tall tree that was in our yard, 25 feet from the house. I remembered every detail, even though I was only 3 or 4 at the time. Although my twin couldn't remember that event, she began to tell me of another time when we lived in the other house. It would have been when we were about 6. As she told the story, I began to remember it too, and even finished some of her sentences for her. As she remembered us floating through the family room and out the front door, and we passed through the living room, she remembered yelling to me, "Patty, don't look out the window," because there was a big eye out there. I was in front of her, and because when someone tells you not to look, the first thing you do is look, I turned and looked back. I only recall seeing the top part of the eye, but she saw the entire black almond-shaped eye staring at her. She couldn't remember any other feature, but we both knew it was an eye, even at that age. After that, the encounter that we both now believe was alien, we had several memories of flying. There was a field that we now realize was a wheat field. Another one had patches of flowers and a few tall trees standing alone. We talked then about those times and how we had no trouble getting off the ground and how high we'd go and how we'd worry about getting down even though it was never an issue. It was like we had complete control over our flying experiences. And then it occurred to me that the fields that we saw were unfamiliar to us. Neither I nor my twin could place where they were. We knew they were nowhere near either of the 2 houses we'd lived in during this time. Had we slipped into another dimension? Had the extraterrestrials taken us somewhere far from home? This is a question we still have no answer for. At school, we both remember telling our friends that we could fly. We have the clear memory of them all gathering around us to watch, but we couldn't get off the ground. No matter how hard we tried and no matter how easy it had been in those strange fields, we could not prove to our friends that we had that ability. They laughed at us as we stood there in silence, looking at each other for the reassurance that never came. When we finally found our voices, we pretended like it never happened, and we never spoke of it again until after our birthday this year. Now, I know all of this sounds insane, but as sure as I'm sitting here typing this, I know that my sister and I flew. We may never know where or in what dimension those fields existed that we flew over, but she and I both know that we flew. I wish this were the end of my story, but it's not. As much as I missed looking at the sky, as soon as I started doing it again, I began to see the UFOs. Perhaps they'd never gone away in the 2 years that I hadn't looked up. Maybe they'll always be there for me. My husband and I were in the hot tub one day and talking about the UFOs when it occurred to us that of all the types of UFOs I've seen over the years, I've only seen 3 different kinds on television. But there are so many shows about ETs and UFOs and UAPs and SAPs now, but only 3 kinds are ever mentioned. Of all the encounters I've had, my husband has only witnessed one with me. He knows it was nothing of this earth, and he said it couldn't be. Impossible is the word that he used. We were talking about Dr. Stephen Greer and how he gets groups together in the desert to meditate and call upon the UFOs to come and visit with great success. And as my husband was getting out of the hot tub, he said that maybe I should call them in. We both had a couple of beers in us, and one thing led to another, and that's what I did. 3 times. And all 3 times my husband was able to see a UFO. I didn't, but I didn't ask them to reveal themselves to me. I asked them to reveal themselves to him, and that's what they did. And then we called my twin, and we got her involved. She was able to do that too, despite having her doubts. Now, I don't know what this all means to me. I don't want to see anymore, but my only option is to not look up. My husband would rather not see any more either. It leaves me with so many questions. Do some people have a 6th or even a 7th sense that allows for a better connection with them? Are twins more likely to have that connection? Were my twin and I marked by ETs as children? Have they experimented on us? It is the summer of 2023, and I haven't seen one yet. But I know it's not if, it's when. That much I have come to accept. Okay, I've had this story, well, I don't really know how long I've had this story, but it's, Neoma did a great job editing this, and so that you got I think you got the full blast of what these girls are going through, especially the one who wrote in. And there's really nothing for me to add to it other than it is fascinating to me. This UFO stuff is so extremely interesting. And just one point, the part in the story where her and her sister are telling now I'm not laughing at them. It's just a cute little scene in my mind of these 2 little twin girls saying, oh yeah, we can fly. And all the other kids gathering around them going, okay, let's see it. And then they just look at each other and they're like, why aren't we flying? I get that. Kids are that way. It's like I said, it's just a cute little scene. But that's one of the scenes in the story that really stuck out to me. Anyway, I wanted to share this story with y'all. I thought it was great, and I hope you enjoyed it. I appreciate you listening to this podcast, and we will see you guys on the next one. Thanks a million.